leveraging technology for your business, and not just Sales Rabbit, but apps from communication to CRMs to scoreboarding to lead management to marketing. I think that there's, it was funny. I literally had a password. I'm sure if somebody hacked that, I'd be screwed in life. But it was like all the things I needed passwords for in my softwares in my business. And there was like 72 softwares. And I was like, what the freak? Like whether it was, marketing stuff and, logins to design stuff. And, and I was like, holy cow, like we spend money on 72 of these things. Like it was like a wild, like eye opener. I was like, geez. But I think the biggest problem is most companies don't know what text to use, what stack how to integrate those things, and then how to get the most out of those things. And they pay for it. They think it's like, oh, that sounds really fine and dandy, but then they don't milk it for what it's worth.
You can have the best software in the world, the uber successful, that means Microsoft, Salesforce or something, or Sales Rabbit. You have the best software in the world, you put it on your shelf, you stare at it, it's really nice and pretty, but if you don't actually use it, if you're not building adoption in your team, it's not going to do a thing for you. And in our company, we look at ourselves as being able to control or like have a couple of different levers we can help our clients with. How can we motivate reps, get them working more hours in a day? How can we make them more efficient? Out of those hours, can we increase their contact rate? And then mastery or effectiveness, can we increase their close rate? So you're going from just getting them to work another 15 minutes per day to we're actually increasing our close rate. And all of that's good. But I think there's an even higher level of, okay, Sales Rabbit does X for me. Or if I'm in the roofing industry, maybe AccuLynx does, Y for me, these incredible things. But my reps are going to adopt them better. It's going to increase motivation, efficiency, mastery, not just by themselves, but it's going to take it to another level if these different systems are speaking to each other. Mm-hmm. Because if my rep has to bounce between X, Y, Z, back and forth between these different platforms, re-entering the same information over and over again kills adoption. It's actually going to decrease your efficiency. So something we're always stressing with our clients is, here's what Sales Rabbit can do for you, but there's these other areas that we're just not going to serve. It's not our bread and butter. So you need to use those as well. We kind of talk with you, consult with you on how to put together that tech stack, and then making sure that they're all talking together to create an efficient process.
So something I see is, regardless of the product or service company, whatever they're selling, behaviors in software buying is kind of an interesting thing to watch. So the buying group for software has grown. So typically, it's 5 to 7 people are making that decision as to what software they're going to buy. So that's the buying group that we're essentially selling to, right? And they come to the table. It used to not be that way. It used to be a smaller group. And another thing that's changed is people rely on reviews and peer feedback about solutions more than ever.
Yeah.
Another mistake that we see companies make is they come to the buying table and they haven't developed a criteria list of why they're getting this software and what they need the software to do. And so then they go out and they look at it and they're like, oh, I'm going to go buy a field sales solution. So they go and they look at what solution providers are in field sales instead of saying, I need a solution that does ABC and XYZ for this amount of time, for this amount of people, and I've gone around and talked to my whole org and my team, and here's our requirements list. We need to do all these different things, and then go to market and go look for solutions that meet that criteria, right? That's really how you should evaluate and shop for it. There's a great solution I always tell people about is g2crowd.com, which is basically a software indexing site. They index all these software solutions by category. And we actually went and worked with them to develop a whole new category called field sales. So now you can go to g2crowd.com, you can click on field sales, and you can look at it. There's 50 plus solution providers that are all in that same lane, trying to create some field sales solutions. And, one solution provider might meet your requirements list.
Yeah.
One solution provider won't. Usually you're going to find a company that does almost everything, and you're going to probably say, oh, we'll go with them because they do most of our list, whereas someone else doesn't, right?
To Zub's point, you'll get an instigator of that software conversation, someone who identifies the need for their particular area of the business. And maybe that person's in sales, maybe they're in operations, maybe it's an individual rep that used Sales Rabbit at a different company and they're coming in saying, why do you guys not have this? But it really is important that you're looking at all different aspects of business, because if I'm looking at it exclusively on the operations side, then I'm going to miss out on the individual reps' needs. I'm going to miss out on what kind of visibility do the managers need. So when you're going to go make that decision, looking at G2 Crowd or Capterra or others that are going to give you reviews and a pretty good definition of what these different platforms do, it's important that I know what does ops need, what does sales need, maybe even deeper, what does IT need? Like, do we need to API into this software to connect it with our back-end systems that we use? So once you know that, you're going to be able to make a decision that's actually lasting, that you guys can use for years on end.
Yeah, because a lot of times people are swapping around, and that just creates like
it's because they're
work.
They're not having that big conversation initially to identify the needs.
So something that we see a lot of is, obviously sales reps move around companies, right?
Yep.
And they also move into different roles. And so sales reps come into a new company and they're like, oh, we need X solution. Well, why do we need X solution? Because that's what I used at Y company, and that's just what I know. And so we need this here. Well, we need it for these basic things. And then you have someone else who comes in and like, oh, well, we need this. And really, there's a lot of times there's just a lack of planning that happens for the organization across the whole. To Mike's point about planning for all these different departments' needs and creating a system and process that arches over all those needs, right?
Yeah.
Sales Rabbit just sits into a sliver of that. You have all these other solutions, but they need to be integrated. They need to be planned together. And our favorite buyer is the buyer who comes to the table and they're mature in their understanding and planning, and they know exactly what they need. Now, one of the great values that we provide is that the majority of these buyers, right, they don't have that. They don't have a person in their org who's just over, their field sales technology, or who's over, even
because it's usually a 10-man company, and that's like one of the things.
And so they just don't know what they don't know. They don't know what to look for. They don't know how to think about solutions before Sales Rabbit, post Sales Rabbit, integrating it across. One of the great values you get is you're talking to people at Sales Rabbit who have done this thousands and thousands of times, and they know, oh, you're this company, you're this size, you probably should be looking at solutions that look like this or do this, because what's going to happen is if you don't plan for this, and I'm not hearing you guys talking about planning for that, you need to be thinking about this as well in connection with buying Sales Rabbit.
One of the things that I loved about Door-to-Door Con and what you created, Sam, was there is this innate competitiveness in field sales, like any industry would be. But you got these different companies that are trying to take each other's lunch, and how do I get these people to actually talk to each other? And you did that. You created an environment where they were willing to collaborate to a certain level, share knowledge. And I think the initial theme you had that first year was a rising tide raises all ships, right? All boats. And so at Sales Rabbit, when we talk to these companies, we want to identify those gaps and identify a way to lift them. And I think that what I would tell your listeners and anybody in field sales is, when you're partnering with software companies, don't just partner based on what they individually can do for me, but identify companies that are going to consult with me and say, let's look at all of the gaps in your process, and here's what we can fulfill on. And then here's the other things that we can't fulfill on, and we're going to introduce you to the other companies that fill those gaps. And oh, by the way, we integrate with them.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.